Right, welcome back to the program. You're still watching Daybreak live on Trust TV, and it's time for us to introduce you to the conversation of the day, one that has got a lot of people talking over the past couple of months. You might have seen some of those passionate debates about food security and how GMOs are either revolutionary or are agents of destruction for the Nigerian agricultural sector. But what are they, and what are the ups and the downsides to the conversation? Most recently, we've seen demonstrations in states like Jigawa State, for instance, and in other parts of the country, to be honest, where seminars and events have been put together to caution the Nigerian government as well as regulators and stakeholders within the agricultural value chain about the dangers that GMOs portend for Nigeria's food security. The arguments have been for and against GMOs, so we're going to try to shed light on the myths, the misconceptions, the misinformation, as well as the reality that is the GMOs. And food security in Nigeria, of course, as you can imagine, is a pressing issue because we've heard what the Food and Agriculture Organization had to say, the World Food Programme. Several reports have come out to talk about the risks Nigeria face and millions of Nigerians face when it comes to food security, not only this year, but going into 2025. So the introduction of genetically modified organisms into the Nigerian agricultural sector has sparked debates around its potential for food security and some of the dangers it portends for our immediate and long-term future, especially when we talk about food security. So let's bring in our guest, who is an expert on this particular discussion. Dr. Segun Adebayo is the Deputy Director of CEFSAR. CEFSAR is the Center for Food and Safety and Agriculture, Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research. Dr. Segun, it's a pleasure to have you join us on the program. It's good to see you this morning.
Good morning. Good to see you too. Good morning, Nigeria.
Help me understand the best way to contextualize this argument, where on one hand we understand that this is a revolutionary idea about ensuring food security, and on the other side of the argument, we're told that this is the beginning of the end for organic seeds, and potentially it could open us to a very big risk where we, instead of trying to achieve food security, we are guaranteeing food insecurity for Nigeria. Help me contextualize this idea.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy you started from food security because I think that's the biggest conversation for or against GMOs. And I would like to be contextual with my response to you. Let's take Tanzania, for instance. Tanzania has achieved 128% food security, food sufficiency. In other words, they are now food sufficient and exporting to other African countries. Tanzania has banned GMOs.
Right.
There's no GMOs in Tanzania. In fact, what we know has Stella maize in Nigeria, which Nigeria commercialized in January, Tanzania started the trials and cancelled it twice. They started it in 2018, they cancelled it. They were lobbied to do it again in 2021, and they cancelled it. And currently, there is no active cultivation of GMOs in Tanzania. And Tanzania decided that they were going to focus on number one, because how did they achieve the food sufficiency? Number one, they eliminated post-harvest losses. They minimized it to the barest minimum. And in Nigeria at the moment, our post-harvest losses is at 40% of our agricultural produce. Big problem. Number two, they focused on organic and agroecological practices in Tanzania, regenerative agriculture, where the farmer does not need to consistently go and buy seeds from the seed merchants. He can reproduce the seeds that have been given to us by God for thousands of years. So the farmer can regenerate it and farm at zero cost. And that's what Tanzania, that's large, by and large, that's what Tanzania did. We can all look up the reports. And if we are going to achieve food sufficiency in Nigeria, one of the first things we need to do, I think that, stopping the post-harvest losses is a big deal. That already secures about 40% of our harvest. Number two, let's look at transport into the farms. The roads are bad currently. And even in the city, we know the cost of transportation. Talk less of the cost of transportation from the rural areas, the smallholder farmers in the villages where the bulk of our foods are produced. So imagine the cost of transportation from the town, from the villages to the town, to the city. Many times, and that's what leads to the post-harvest losses. The food spoils before it gets to the market. And then the farmers are discouraged. They have low income from their produces. Let's also look at the area of mechanized farming, subsidized farming also for our farmers. These are solutions, that practical solutions. So the big question is, how does GMO solve all this? It doesn't. GMOs are not going to give us good roads to the farms. GMOs are not going to stop the post-harvest losses. GMOs are not going to stop the farming security, which is also the biggest problem. From the Center of Food Safety, we're currently working on the research, and we are finding out that 98% of the areas that have been bedeviled by insurgents, local terrorists, and unknown gunmen, bandits, or whatever name you want to call them, are farming settlements. So if our farmers cannot farm, what happens? Look at Enugu, just a second. Enugu recently recorded some rice farmers shot on the farms. Niger State, some farmers were killed, and the harvest, 50 bags of maize were burnt on the farm. So where do we go from here? How does GMO solve all that?
Yeah, so a lot of people would, counter that by saying, if GMOs is not the biggest threat in the Nigeria agriculture value chain, then why are we witnessing this significant pushback against GMOs? If we have structural issues around security, around infrastructure, around insurance or risk, assessment around post-harvest losses and things like that, what's the big deal then about this GMO pushback?
So I would go in two prongs. One, the first pushback, the first reason why we even bring up GMOs and food security is because it is a fake narrative that GMOs will lead us to food security. So we wouldn't have put GMOs and food security in the same conversation if the proponents of GMOs didn't do that in the first place. So we say all of these things to counter what they say, that these are actually marketing gimmicks.
Is it not a fact?
It's not a fact, because GMOs cannot solve food security, the food security problem. Because how are the GMOs going to solve the insurgents in the farm? I mean, as the insurgents, the bandits, have they been told not to attack farms where there are GMOs? Let's know. So GMOs are not going to solve the farming security. They won't stop the post-harvest losses. They will not fix the roads. They won't give the farmers mechanized farming. Those are problems that need to be solved. So the proponents of GMO should stop saying that GMOs are going to solve food security.
Is it possible that what they're saying about food security is they're talking about the scale of production?
Okay.
And how farmers would gain a lot more if they use genetically modified seeds, for instance, and how their harvest would be bountiful, much more, and that is what it is in relation to in terms of food security.
And that's why I said it's two-pronged. I was going to the other side.
Right.
The second side to it is this: like you said, it's to give bountiful harvest, but at what cost? The seeds, your first harvest is going to be bountiful. You will get a lot, but the second harvest from the same seeds, you get nothing. So you have to go back to the seed farmers. You have to go back to them to get the seeds from them again. And I'm going to give an example here in Nigeria. There's a report by the Cotton Farmers Association. You can see that 23rd of September. It's in the dailies. And they said that they have used GMO BT cotton for 4 years. And it has not given them significant yield. Rather, it has increased their cost of farming because the price of seeds have gone up. When they started, it was 15,000 naira per kg. You need 4 kgs for a hectare. Now it's 55,000 naira per kg. And you need...
It went from 15 to
15 to 55. And not just that it went from 15 to 55, you're also talking about the cost of herbicides, because now the first planting season you spray, because these GMOs these seeds are made herbicide tolerant, so you can use the herbicides at will. First planting season you spray, all the weeds go. By the second planting season, you're not going to start having what you call super weeds and super bugs, so you will need more. You will spray more before those super weeds and super bugs get out of your farm. And these are proven research and proven reports we see in India, where they deploy the same cotton, BT cotton, and the companies responsible, which is Monsanto Bayer, who produced the herbicides, they have a report in 2010 where they admitted the failure of their BT cotton in actually boosting the textile industry in India, because the bugs and the weeds became resistant to the chemicals, and then the farmers started using more chemicals, and then the price of the seeds were going up because they were engineering more seeds that were trying to be more resistant, and the prices were going higher. It led to a lot of farmers, I mean, you could look up the report, over 15,000 farmers killed themselves because they couldn't cope with what was going on. And we have the same reports in Brazil, we have the same reports in Burkina Faso, and now we have the same reports in Nigeria. So to say that GMO seeds are going to give us bountiful harvest is a marketing gimmick, because it drives the cost of farming high. Let's not even talk about the fact that you need what you call refuge farming. Refuge farming means that your land, 100% of your land will not be used for farming, for the GMO farm. You will use 20% of your land for what they call the refuge. So you plant the organic in 20% so that the pests can go there and then they would not attack your GMO farm. How many farmers have that land mass to give to refuge farming? Your harvest is not coming from there, just to protect the GMO farms. Let's also look at the fact that on GMO farms, you really can't practice, you really can't do mixed farming. You're going to do monocropping, because the other crops, for instance, if I want to plant watermelon has ground cover in between the ridges of my maize, I can't do that because the pesticides, the watermelon is not resistant to the pesticide. So the pesticide will treat the watermelon as weeds and kill them off. So these are the concerns. Land use. So it's not a business for smallholder farmers, if you look at it that way. And even in Monsanto's report in India, they actually advised that smallholder farmers don't go into GMO farming. So where are we going to in Nigeria when smallholder farmers are being promised?
Yeah. So is there a chance that, it's not all bad news, that we can have small drops of this disruptive science that, has its pros and cons, just like anything else, I suppose, in life? It has its upsides and it has its downsides. Is there any way in your assessment where GMOs can be applied in a very cautious manner so that we can at least learn from some of the experiences of other countries that have, witnessed this downside that you're talking about?
Is there any country currently that does not have active pushback against GMOs? I'll tell you, none. Almost every country, because most of the GMOs are consumables, what you eat. And this leads me to talking about the real impact, why the pushback is actually very strong. Number one, it is proven that GMOs actually lead to health issues. There is a popular research by Professor Seralini, who fed GMO maize to mice for a period of time. And those mice developed cancerous tumors over the period of time. Well-documented research, it's available on the internet for everyone to see. And then the proponents of GMOs began to sponsor counter-research and said that Professor Seralini's research was not, didn't follow the proper methodology and all that. Now, the science community said, produce your counter-research, and they couldn't. And so Professor Seralini's research was unpublished a few months after it was published. But when there was no counter research, it was republished, and it stands still today as a major proof that GMOs lead to cancerous tumors. It's there for anyone to see, peer-reviewed, and it's out there.
There's someone who would say, Dr. Segun, you are scaremongering, because risks is a part of life, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, you could get hit by a car. Does that mean that cars are bad? I mean, people get attacked by bandits using sophisticated weapons. Does that mean guns are inherently bad? I mean, it all depends on application, and sometimes these disruptions, has, certain costs. But does it outweigh the positives of, this particular idea?
The negatives completely outweigh whatever positive that is being pushed. And, you know, I just talked about health. Let's talk about patents. Let's talk about economic implication. Number one, these seeds are patented. In other words, they are coming from another country. And we have good examples around the world to prove this, that it's dangerous. It can lead to food sovereignty loss of a nation. Now, the mere fact that through open air pollination, and I think Nigeria needs to hear this, the mere fact that through open air pollination, you can actually, GMOs can actually cross over. And this is why Mexico banned it. Mexico banned because of this. Now, if you have a GMO farm right where you are, and I have an organic farm here where I am, right? Now, if you planted GMO there, through open air pollination, your GMO can cross over to my farm, and because most GMO seeds are sterile, they sterilize my farm. And then the patent holders of that GMO seed where you are can come to me, who didn't plant GMO, and sue me for possessing GMO seeds on my farm that I did not buy. And this has happened because there are patent laws, and in Nigeria we have the Plant Variety Protection Act of 2021 to protect the seed patent holders against the smallholder or the farmers. So now, if I wouldn't plant GMOs, for instance, wind has blown your sterile GMOs to my farm, first of all, that leads to biodiversity loss. Think about it. It leads to biodiversity loss. Then I can be sued, and it has happened. Monsanto has sued farmers for $25,000, $84,000, and in Brazil, when they totaled it for a period, they had sued farmers over $7.7 billion through patent laws. And part of the patent laws is that you cannot plant the seeds that you bought this year next year. So you have to buy seeds next year.
So it's like, I mean, when we talk about a threat to organic seeds, for instance, directly, this is like the mobile phone replacing the, you know, the landlines, isn't it? Are you saying that directly, if GMOs come in, there's almost a certainty that it will wipe out?
Yes, right. They lead to biodiversity loss. And number two, they're also, now, in the application of the chemicals and also the technology of GMOs, which are made to be resistant to the popular pests that bedevil the crops and all, there are non-target species, non-target organisms that become affected. So what happens? You have, that's why, I mean, when last did you see ladybirds? It affects pollinators because they eat it. These things make the Bacillus thuringiensis, which is the gene from which the GMO stuff was taken. Now, I think we should at this point really look at what is a genetically modified organism. It takes genes from another organism, crosses the species barrier, and introduces it into another organism, which is very unnatural. So you take a gene from a bacteria because the 4-armyworm is resistant to it, or rather, it affects the 4-armyworm, and then you plant it in maize. You cross the species barrier, unnatural method. Now, there are non-target organisms that would eat it and also die and get eliminated. And what are you doing? You're affecting your biodiversity. And this is why countries like Ecuador, after they tried GMO for a while, they burnt all the trial farms. They burnt them because they found out it was leading to biodiversity loss. And in Mexico, Mexico banned it for the same reason. It was leading to biodiversity loss. So, I mean, what are the prawns that could actually make us support this as much as
you're saying there's a bad enough experience and examples across the world.
Across the world.
That Nigeria needs to learn from. But talk to me about the regulatory provisions that we currently have that may or may not check some of these excesses that you are highlighting.
All right, thank you. You know, when we began speaking on this, we immediately went to the regulators. Now, the regulators of biotechnology in Nigeria is the NBMA, the National Nigerian Biosafety Management Agency, NBMA. And we looked at the process of approval for the known GMO crops we have. And we're asking what risk assessments were conducted. Do you have risk assessments to share? We requested for risk assessment from NBMA. We never got them. We know several other organizations that requested for the risk assessments. We never got them. Even when we told them it's under the Freedom of Information Act, we need these documents, let's review it. We never got the documents. And then what the most we got was that they followed the EFSA protocol, the European Food Safety Authority risk assessment protocol, which is a 2-year risk assessment for maize. 2-year risk assessment study for maize. And Austria banned GMOs because of that same EFSA protocol, because it said it is not sufficient to prove that there are long-term risks. It doesn't support the fact that, I mean, you've not studied it for long term, because there are long-term research that shows that GMOs really cause severe issues. Like in US, over 200,000 people sued the producers of glyphosate, which is a mandatory addendum with GMOs, the herbicide, and successfully got paid compensation. Right now it's over $12 billion because they got the cancer over a period of time. So long-term research are currently not in this country. We can tell you for a fact, put it on record, there are no long-term researches for BT cowpea. They submitted for approval in October, and then in 2-3 months they approved for use. I mean, is that sufficient enough to prove that these things are safe? So then when you look at it carefully, when we begin to interrogate the issues, why is NBMA supporting, why is NBMA not, looking into the concerns? I have engaged NBMA one-on-one a number of times, and I've told them, your major issue is that you are in bed with the promoters of GMO. Number one, the NABDA, the Nigerian Biotech Research and Development Agency, they are the promoters of GMO, is sitting on the board of NBMA. How is that possible? I attended NBMA's 7th annual conference a few weeks ago, here in Abuja, and all the speakers were known and profiled promoters of GMO. In fact, they were presenting the next set of GMOs they're about to release. The Open Forum for OFAB, who is a major promoter of GMO, an international organization, they were the ones sharing conference materials at the Biosafety Organization. That's like the referee is now striking.
Yeah, and is this one of those situations, Dr. Segun, where, it's just a matter of perspective?
Yeah.
The glass is half full or the glass is half empty. Both arguments are right in this particular sense. And I mean, you draw comparisons with some of these countries where some of the hard-learned lessons are, used as an argument against GMOs. Some would also cherry-pick some of the positive developments. When they
Do you know any of the positive
when they say, for instance, you can produce at mass scale. And when we look at our population, for instance, if we just suppose Nigeria and Tanzania, the population of Tanzania is just a little over 67 million. You're talking about 200 million people here. Do we have enough farms to farm at a scale to guarantee food security? We're dealing with importation challenges, for instance. We're dealing with insecurity, for instance. So the little farmers available, or the farmers we have available, could utilize GMOs to produce at mass scale so that we can produce for the domestic market that is in dire need of food, for instance. Is there a way we can situate the argument where, going back to the question, where we need to have an honest conversation about the up and down sides in a manner that allows for everybody to be on board, whether it's the regulators or the legislators who need to rework some of our legal provisions around biotechnology, for instance? Is this happening, or are we just, having arguments about this?
So there are two things to that. Number one, you said there are pros, the good sides to the GMO, and maybe we should consider maybe for food security. My first question is, have you been to the market and you didn't see food at any time? Even with the current security challenges we're having in the country. If you go to the markets, you will always see food. The issue we have is that the purchasing power of Nigerians has been depleted by the economic realities. And let us not blame the unavailability of food for that. If you go to the markets, you would always see food by the street sides, by the roadsides. There is food everywhere, even with the food challenges we have, even with the challenges we have with food insecurity in the country. The challenge is that Nigerians, the purchasing power has been depleted, and almost every organization are declaring losses because of the same purchasing power. You know, blue chip companies and big organizations are leaving the country for the same reason. Now, back to your other question about how can maybe we should really sit down and look at how we can coexist. That's what you're saying, having honest conversation. We're actually having a very honest conversation about it. And the bridge that we can use to even coexist is labeling. And this is where we call on the FCCPC. Nigerians must have an option to choose what they want to eat or not. If GMOs are properly labeled in this country at consumption level, such that you know that what you're eating, maybe this is what we need to revolutionize our food industry, so that every single consumable is labeled and Nigerians know that I'm eating a GMO or I'm not eating it, because right now GMOs are not labeled, and we have very strong and stringent labeling laws.
And how much of it do we have in the markets?
We have maize, we have cotton, and we have beans. You don't know whether the last beans you ate is GMO or not. You're not aware. The last pap or moimo you ate or pap, you are not aware. And this is giving Nigerians the option of not knowing what they're eating. And this is the biggest problem, not labeling. I mean, if you want to eat go to foreign countries, you will see the GMO tomatoes. They are big, huge, four pounds for a basket or something, for maybe just a few. But you see the organic ones, 19. Cheap and more expensive, smaller. They don't look as nice as the GMOs. But I mean, so labeled, properly labeled. But we don't have the luxury of labeling here in Nigeria. So what are we saying? This is the big part of the conversation. We can't coexist with this. If I don't have the option to choose what I want to eat, if Nigerians don't have the option of choosing, if you're just telling us that we should listen to NBMA saying that it's safe, that's not enough. Prove to us that it's safe. Give me the option of choice. There's enough people, there's enough pushback around the world for us to know that if people want to eat it and do what, like somebody said at the public hearing, somebody said that it's better we eat it and die. Someone actually said that at the public hearing, let's eat it and die than not have food at all to eat. So if people want to eat it and die, label it for them to eat and die. Don't open it up on the open market for every Nigerian to eat. So that way, if there are strong labeling laws, and then the companies that are pushing it, who are not following the labeling laws, which we have in Nigeria, which the FCCPC should start looking into, and also NAFDAC, I don't know if you're aware, NAFDAC has said that GMOs, they've never certified any GMO in Nigeria safe for consumption, and they consider it pesticide. So if a regulatory organization as NAFDAC, with good track record in Nigeria for food safety, is being eliminated from the conversation and being twisted to support a narrative, I think that we need to broaden this conversation. And that's why I don't know if you followed the public hearing that happened on the 19th of November, a very passionate public hearing where both sides came out. And of course, we saw it. It was there plain for all to see that this conversation needs to be taken very seriously, especially when our health is on the line. There are a lot of non-communicable diseases on the line. Our biodiversity is on the line. Our food sovereignty is on the line, because when GMOs start depleting our natural heirloom, and then you begin to find out that some of the heirlooms that have existed, that God gave you naturally for thousands of years, you can't find them anymore. Then you're looking at food monopoly by capitalists, and then they can decide who gets food and who doesn't get food. They can decide to jack up the prices, and there's nothing you're going to do.
Is that a realistic concern of yours? Because if they're in the market to make money, they have more reason to sell to you than not to. Isn't it?
If they're in the market, that's what you mean, the GMO companies?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, but of course, if they're in the market, see, we should understand that food can be weaponized. And that's why in countries like Russia, you're deemed a terrorist if you cultivate GMO. Because GMO can actually lead to food terrorism. There's a report by the United States where they said that China, they are concerned that China can actually use GMOs as a bioweapon against them. There's a report on that. We all can look up that report, the 2022 report, where you actually can weaponize GMO against the country. Now, you're looking at very valid concerns here. And it's not just about for profit. It's more than that. Since the World War II ended, the art of warfare changed. It's left from being guns, bullets, and you're talking about policies now that affect countries. You're talking about food. Many of these things can be weaponized. I mean, if Nigeria look at what's happening in the world, there are escalations of war all around. People are getting into war mode, all around. So if we're actually going to say we are preparing for such things and all, and then we have a major food crisis, why don't we rather solve our problems like a country like Tanzania did? And speaking about that, how did Nigeria's population grow from what it was at 1960, which was about maybe 69 or 70 million, to what it is today, when there was no GMOs? Through organic food, organic seed that God gave to this world from time immemorial. Organic seed. Now we get to a point, are we now saying that those regenerative seeds are not going to sustain our population? That is the seeds that terminate, that after the first planting season, you can't plant them anymore. You have to go to the seed merchants. What if the seed merchants say they are not available? What happens?
Are you saying, doctor, that you don't see a scenario where GMOs can coexist with No, I'm saying, do you not see a future where GMOs can coexist with regenerative seeds, organic seeds that we already have? You don't see a future where these two can be sustainably applied within the agriculture value chain?
It's not that
it has to be one or the other?
It's not that I don't see. One eliminates the other. And the organics are not attacking the GMOs, but the GMOs are wiping out the organics. The reports are there. Go to Mexico, check out their reports. Go to Tanzania, go to Malawi also, who said that they will not do GMOs because it will lead to biodiversity loss and the loss of their 800 species of maize, natural seeds. So the GMOs are leading to the depletion of the other one. So it's not me about my sight or my perspective now. It is a reality on ground seen by other countries around the world.
Some say GMOs are the future. Whether we like it or not, right now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, it is going to be a reality. So it's better we find a way to adapt to it. What do you say as a counter argument to that idea?
But that's very easy. Look at 50 years back. The world wasn't dependent on GMOs. 1,000 years back. 2,000 years
so
back.
was the internet, Dr. Segun.
So what's
but
the
now
internet?
We are dependent on the internet for
That's
a variety
food.
of
We
things.
don't eat technology.
Right. Yeah.
We don't eat technology. I mean, we can talk about technology.
But our life mostly depends on it now.
Just a second. We can talk about technology for every other thing, maybe, but when it comes to food, what you put into your body, this body has existed for thousands of years. No biological improvement, none at all, no upgrade. It's just what it is. And knowing that there is nothing man makes that is perfect, everything man makes requires upgrades. Never perfect. We've seen, I had mentioned to you already how Monsanto's seeds in the first place were doing so poorly, they had to upgrade the seeds, and then it keeps happening. You're looking at what's going on with even some other organic technologies that man is making, such as, the vaccines. We all see what's going on with it and all that, how it's a global conversation at the moment. It's not what I should be saying here. Everyone can see it. Man doesn't make what is perfect. So you cannot promise me a future that something that has existed is going to be. You can't promise me that future. You can't do that. Okay. Who are actually the purveyors of this science? Check them out. Who are actually the people making these postulations? Who are the people making it?
Right.
Are they planning to upgrade the human body? Are they planning to make it compatible with the GMOs in the future? You're looking at the rise of, check out, there are correlation maps. Even though some people will say correlations don't mean causation, but there are viable data to see that the rise of cancer in countries like Zimbabwe, go and look at their records. The rise of cancer, the rise of many non-communicable diseases, they came with the rise of GMOs and vaccines globally.
Well, as you did say, correlation does not equal causation.
But there are facts to look at.
Yeah, maybe there are some intersections there. But finally, as we wrap things up in less than a minute, what would you want Nigerians to advocate, especially when it comes to awareness? Because there are a lot of people who don't know what we are talking about, who know very little about GMOs, who don't know how to situate this conversation. As you did say, the labeling part of it is a very big question, where people are consuming something they don't know could, harm their well-being. What would you want Nigerians to take away from this conversation, and how can they be a part of the conversation moving forward?
First, I'll start with the last one. Become more aware, research, do your own studies, be open-minded, and look at what's happening around the world. Don't just take things. The world today is not the world of 20 years ago or 50 years ago. It's not the same, you know. So you have to research, you have to know what you're consuming. You know, I will say the same thing as my last tweet on social media, and also has we recently saw a video where some people were producing I'll call them chemicals in the name of drinks by the roadside. I mean, these are people without conscience. And then a lot of Nigerians will go to the clubs, the pubs, the lounges, and start drinking what they are not aware. And then it will lead to kidney issues, liver issues, and then put their families in peril and all. It's the same thing with the GMOs. And also whatever it is you're going to put into your mouth. It's the same thing I'll talk about processed foods. It's the same thing I'll talk about it. Look at Europe, where GMOs are banned, and many of the raw materials we can't even export to Europe when there's a lot of pesticide, the level of toxicity in our foods. Europe has stringent food laws. You don't have a lot of obesity in Europe, but go to America, where these things are just open. Obesity is everywhere. The food isn't digesting in the stomach because the stomach isn't recognizing what is in there, and then you have food decomposing in the body, and then it's leading to colon cancer. So if you're going to stay healthy, just like I would advocate against a lot of highly processed foods, I'd advocate against many of these things. There's the same way. Be conscious of what you eat. Be careful about what you eat. Grow your own food. And that's why I really love what Her Excellency, the First Lady, started with the Every Home a Garden project, where everyone trying to bring back the planting. Everyone should plant something in their garden. Have your local vegetables, you know. Be conscious of what you're eating. Be careful about what you're eating. And this is my take home to Nigerians. Study, research more. If you're going to be healthy, if you're going to eat well and live well, you have to be careful about what you eat.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it here for now. It's a developing issue, and one that I think is keenly being followed by the media and a lot of Nigerians who have invested a lot of their time and resources to understand what is happening in this particular sector. As you did say, there's a lot of pushback regarding GMOs and its attendance effect on societies beyond just what's happening here in Nigeria, but across the world. Dr. Segun Adebayo, as always, thank you so much for joining us on the program this morning. We do appreciate you for your expert analysis.
Thank you
so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
That's our conversation with Dr. Segun Adebayo, Deputy Director at CEFSAR, the Center for Food Safety and Agricultural Research, as we discuss food security and GMOs and how they fit into the conversation moving forward in Nigeria. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it will be time to take you through the front pages of some select national dailies this morning. Newspaper review is up next. Join us again.